Hi, welcome to Journey into Parenting. So this channel is dedicated to making a space to help you prepare for parenthood and to nurture you along that journey as well. And today I'm really excited to have Faye to do an interview, and she has founded an organisation called Freelance Mum, which is all about supporting mums on their kind of business journey. So Faye, I wonder if you could just tell me a bit about how it was that you started Freelance Mum and kind of what led you to that point in your journey.
Yeah, so I've always been a freelancer. I've been a freelance voiceover, well, for most of my, well, let's say a good 15 years. So freelancing wasn't something that I struggled with. And then when I had my firstborn, Jemima, so she's now 8, I suddenly realised just how difficult a place it was juggling freelance work around motherhood. And I felt that we needed to build a community to support fellow freelance mums and mums in business. And I must also add that my default setting is the word mum, but actually that inclusive of dads as well.
Oh, that's good to know. Great.
Yes, yeah. And initially I went around trying to build a community with podcasts. So my background as a broadcaster was quite simple to go and interview fellow mums in business, and I'd sort of take Jemima in a buggy, push her around in a buggy in one hand and then microphone in the other, and try and build face-to-face, these podcasts. And then as that went on, I realised that actually what we needed was face-to-face meetings, and this sort of coincided with by then having my second-born Suki, which was 6 years ago, and eventually we launched these face-to-face meetings, and I felt that what we needed was an opportunity to network and bring your children. And at the time, it felt like a real punt. It felt like, oh my goodness, we're sticking our neck on the line here. But I felt always quite sure that children and mums could talk about business, perhaps children, not children, but we could talk successfully about business and do work and refer work to each other, providing we had the right framework. And I've always found that framework works best when both children and adults are catered for equally. So it wasn't a case of children being paved off with a breadstick and there you go, just see if you can get on with that, but like genuinely providing craft activities and so on and so on. And of course, during COVID-19, we've had to kind of re-emerge again, which I think is quite interesting. So the podcasts have they're a more solid part of our offering, and we now have digital coffee mornings and meetups, and we try and keep them all to a sort of 45-minute window to work with children, or the fact that you're going to have a child there as well. So we still are a very supportive community. And the idea being that we just support, fellow mums in business on their freelance mum journey all the way.
It's great. And I really experience the network as being incredibly supportive. And one of the things that drew me to it is that I'm a huge advocate of integrating your children into your life. So rather than, having to make a choice, whether you go back to work or whether you spend a lot of time with your children, if you can sort of find a way to integrate both things, and then you can stay well within yourself, because I think actually part of self-care is keeping our careers going and keeping those things going that make us feel like us, but also not having to kind of compromise on the time that we spend with our children. I'm curious when you said that, because I've only been to the online meetings because I joined kind of post-COVID. But yeah, so in the in-person meetings, how do you integrate the children?
So what we do is we start the meetings with an icebreaker, and they're always slightly bonkers, and there's usually the children crawling around or whatever, and there might be an element. I'm trying to think of the sort of things that we've done now, Nina, like I might provide a pair of shoes and people have to imagine who the shoes might belong to, create a character who they might belong to, write a bit about that character and where you'd like to go for a walk with them. And of course you've got children merrily in the mix while you might be presented with a pair of hot pink DMs, for example. And then off the back of that, we go on a netwalk, and that has been possibly one of the most key elements of Freelance Mum, is it because I think everyone is able to talk so much better when you're outside, and we do that whatever the weather. And of course, when they're little, you can do it either strapped to you or in their buggies. When they're a bit older, they're usually happy to kind of walk around, a bit of a pootle around the farm, or go on their scooters. And it's about having those elements and those touch points that, children have always been included. And then when we go back and we have coffee and cake, it's quite a clear format to the meetings that just allow it to work. which everyone's always happy once they've got, you know, something warm in their tummies. And then you've got the guest speaker. And once we have the guest speaker, and I realised really early on, actually, the guest speaker needed a microphone, because if you've got children there, there is extra noise. The acoustics aren't ace. So the parents need to be able to hear the speaker. But also simultaneously, the children needed something as well. So there'd always be ride-ons for them, or there's always a craft activity that would be, if we're clever, we've got our wits about us, it might be in some way relating to what the guest speaker might be. Whether the child had picked up on those themes or not would be another matter. But, you know, I don't know, say if it was something about Yo Valley Farm might speak, we've made things out of yogurt pots or things like that. You know, we've always had an element where things could be related back to it. And it's never been, you know, it's not uncommon, it's standard to have your guest speaker there while a child's just sort of laying in front of you or crawling around or whatever. And it's like you say, Nina, it's about having that inclusive thing. I never wanted to apologise for having a child, or that it makes you less of a business person. That actually children are very much a part of our lives, and that you might be there with a bit baby sick on your shoulder, and you might have a child who's just having a tantrum, but it doesn't mean to say that you are less capable of making a decision. I don't subscribe to the we can have it all, but I subscribe to the I think we can have a little bit of most things, so long as we balance it successfully.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And you know, I think one of the things that's brilliant about what you just described in terms of actually integrating what the speaker is saying with the children's activities is that that's really, it's wonderful from an educational perspective, because then rather than, you know, I think when I was a child, you know, it was more of a kind of traditional setup where my dad would go to work and my mum would stay at home. And I remember like thinking that my dad's work was something incredibly mysterious. Like I had really no idea what he did all day.
Well,
And so for children to grow up
yeah.
actually having a sense of what their parents are doing is great. But I think also, like, I wonder if this is why I find Freelance Mum so nourishing, is that we get to witness each other as our whole selves. So we get to witness each other both as parents, and as sort of professionals or creatives. And I feel like, I don't know, like when I went to kind of traditional baby groups, part of me would kind of die a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it's that it sort of feels like you're not, for some reason I didn't feel like I was able to kind of be my full self there. And actually, you know, somehow, because we work so hard as mothers, and as business owners, and having other people there who recognize, you know, how hard it is, and you know how amazingly we're all doing, is yeah, that's really great.
It's a great turn of phrase, be your whole self, and that was exactly how I felt. I remember going to these baby groups, and you know, there was only so much I could talk about, you know, the different types of nappies or whatever, and then I might sort of identify with a few professional women, and then they'd go back to work, and I realized that actually they could no more relate to me as I could relate to, in fact, any, you know, some women might have decided that they're going to be a stay-at-home mum. That was cool, that's what worked for them. And then some mums might go back to work, and that was cool, that worked for them. But there wasn't anyone else like me who was actually already trying to juggle children and work from home. And some people would look at me sympathetically and oh gosh, you poor thing, having to work from home. And I was like, no, I really like what I do. You know, don't feel sorry for me. And then others might look at me in a kind of like, are you mad? You're working when your children are so little. It's like, but that's what helps me to function. The fact that I still have this time that I can carve out and I can go and be me. And I can still be a mum. And it was a lifestyle choice. It was, you know, I didn't have to make a set of decisions about my working day. My working day was always able to weave in around the girls. So for me, that always worked really well. But I did find that I felt isolated because I wasn't able to identify with other mothers. And that's how Freelance Mum was born.
Okay, yeah, amazing. And yeah, I think it's really interesting what you said also about, you know, not trying to have it all, because I think I was writing about this morning actually, that's kind of what I tried to do in the beginning, because I felt somewhat invisible as a mother, and I ended up starting my own kind of outdoor theatre company, and so I was kind of trying to look after my son full time and run the company full time. And then I ended up getting this kind of autoimmune condition because I was so exhausted from that. And now I think, I guess having to kind of take care of my body more effectively just means that I just can't do that. I can't work to that level anymore. But actually, if you focus on what feels the most meaningful in your life, you know, what really nourishes you and lights you up, then somehow I find that I need less stuff, or I need less because my life feels very rich and very full. I don't know if you can relate to that.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can. I like the fact that you said, I think there is a part, I think we've all fallen foul of it, especially when you're passionate about what you do, and you're like, actually, I went into this because I feel really passionate, but now I've kind of like, the lines have become a bit blurred. I'm possibly doing too much in the evenings, or I'm possibly doing, you know, sometimes it can be hard, and you need to pull back, and you need that element of objectivity again, and that can be really hard. And we've definitely all fallen victims of that, and possibly even more so during lockdown, where it's difficult to get that space and that perspective. But when you can get that space, and when you can make it work, and you can do that around your children, like you say, actually that's massively fulfilling. And in many ways, I think that, or not in many, but in some ways, I think that fellow freelance mums, we're almost in a privileged position, in that we've already been subjected and got used to working from home while having children, in possibly a way that if you were employed you might not have done. Uh, Obviously I've not been an employed mum to be able to see that completely, but I can only imagine that in many ways it puts us in a slightly better position, because we've already had to adapt, and we've had to learn to roll with things much more quickly anyway. Financially it might be a different scenario, because obviously financially people have been affected in different ways, but I think in terms of the adaptation to homeschooling and working from home, we were probably already there.
Yeah, and I think part of it is also, I feel like there's been a tendency in our culture to sort of to have a situation where our children are both kind of overly pampered, and overly controlled. And actually, if you have this situation where your child's very integrated into your life, then it feels like it's more natural to get them to kind of take more responsibility for themselves. Like I kind of feel like, you know, that maybe my son has the benefit of me being around, well, all the time at the moment.
Yeah.
But in exchange for that, I expect him to take a certain amount of responsibility for, you know, doing chores or contributing to the household. And for me, this also is a kind of probably a more beneficial way of doing things, because actually, you know, children are, you know, are humans as well, and part of the process is helping them to take responsibility for their own lives. And
yeah, agreed. Like, you know, my 8-year-old, she's 8, she doesn't need to go to bed as early, and bedtimes have probably gone back a bit during lockdown, and I've almost stopped calling it bedtime and started to call it quiet time, and sort of started to explain, actually it's grown up time now, or it's quiet time now. It's 8 o'clock, but it's important that, you know, you might not be tired straight away, but now's a good time to read or to listen to an audio book. My 8-year-old loves making, but I've realised that actually making overstimulates her, and then she sleep, you know, so it's kind of almost about reframing it. I don't profess to be any kind of parenting expert. I'm very much making up as I go along. But I think that for me, it's just slightly rebadging things. Like 8 o'clock is quiet time. I'm not going to keep going up and downstairs, but I'm going to see how you're doing. It's about making it work within your family, really, and your setup.
Yeah, definitely. And sort of finding a situation where somehow we can balance everyone's needs, I think. I just wonder if you have any advice for new mums who are like, either they're freelancers already or they're wanting to become freelancers. What would your kind of top tips be for that?
I wish I have these written down, Nina, and I ought to, because I haven't. They'll be written down somewhere, squared away, because I get asked it, and it's a really good question.
Okay.
I think the most important thing actually is to microtask. So when you're a new mum and you're passionate about your business, no doubt you've got a million ideas, and they're all bits buzzing around your head, and you're slightly sleep deprived, and you want to do all of them because you're passionate about it all. The trick is, it's just like, how do you eat an elephant? Bite by bite. Let's microtask it. Let's chop that one right down, because you can do it. And I know what it's like to have an idea and to be completely obsessed with it. You can't sleep and you can't rest until you manage to put that idea to bed. But you are also time poor. You've got a little human being that you're trying to keep alive. Really, really break that down and try and work out some things can you do actually just in 15 minutes. What are the 15-minute jobs that you can do? Could you just spend 15 minutes on social media? Because we all get those windows that you might not expect. Oh, I've suddenly got an unexpected 15-minute window. What's the 15-minute job that I can do now that would help? What would be a useful 15-minute task? What if I put my laptop this way to face them? I can, are they happy? I think there's something about learning to read your child, isn't it?
Yeah.
And once you see that they're playing quite happily, I think it's a learnt skill that you don't necessarily always have to be down on the carpet with them every moment. It took me a long time to learn.
And I find also, like, if you sort of invest, I guess at the beginning of the day or the beginning of the time that you're with them, if you really kind of, give them some good high quality attention, then they can sort of be like filled up on that for a little while.
Yes.
And then and I found that advice really helpful, because I remember like managing to get some emails done on my iPhone at the park or whatever, and actually you can get a lot done that way.
Yeah, definitely. And also I think explain what you're doing as your children become a little bit older. I'd say, mummy's just replying to an email, it's for mummy's work. And it was just easier to explain that. And you do find yourself saying, almost apologizing, but actually, no, it's mummy's work. Mummy's just replying to this. And we don't need to be embarrassed in the same way that, you grew up as I grew up. My dad would go out to work and he'd come back again at 5. He did this mystical thing in between called work. It's different, isn't it, for our children growing up? And
for them to recognize that we have needs as well, I think is important, and that it actually helps them to be more empathic towards us, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think finally the other piece of advice, and it's almost a cliche these days, but is you can't pour from an empty cup. So when you're trying to look after other human beings and pour yourself into a business, actually do remember to top yourself up, to do the things that you can do to replenish yourself. That's a really important thing. Yeah,
absolutely. Not to feel guilty about taking care of yourself, because if like you said, if your cup's full, then that will kind of overflow to the people around you, and it's a win-win situation.
Definitely.
Great. Cool. Well, I will write a transcript of the talk and put it in the show notes. And I'll also put links to Freelance Mum. And I've got a book. It's called Spirited, a creative workbook to prepare you for the adventure of parenting, and I'll put that in the link as well.
Super. Well,
right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Bye.